Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast, Field Goals and Forecasts. I am once again, as always, your host, Ryan Adio, and the NFL regular season has just concluded. Week 18 is now over. All the divisional games have ended. Everything is set, every playoff seed, and there's been a slew of coaches fired around the league. And that's the first thing I'm going to talk about. I'm going to jump into some news, and I'm going to go over just some game recaps, and then I'm going to give you my playoff predictions, and of course, the quick picks that go along with that. But, like I said, let's start with these coach firings. Tons of coaches have been fired around the league. First, I'm going to start with the Seahawks. They fire their first-year offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb. The Seahawks finished 14th in total offense this season, and maybe it was just me, but I feel like they weren't using their key players to their advantage. Kenneth Walker felt like he was being underused. DK Metcalf. JSN had a breakout year, though. Geno Smith, consistently throwing the ball over and over and over and over, which might have, attributed to his firing, but not the worst job, but I think they're looking to bring somebody new in. Let's continue to the Colts. The Colts have fired their defensive coordinator, Gus Bradley, after 3 seasons with them. They finished the season, which I didn't actually know this, but they finished 29th in defense. Their last 2 games really killed them. And I would say mostly those last 2 games probably had the biggest impact. Losing to the Giants, that's bad. And then this last game against the Jags, which they won, but still, the Jags putting up 23 on you, that's rough. That's really rough. So they finished 29th in total defense by the end of the season. That would be the reason why. They had a lot of top-of-the-league tacklers. Kenny Moore is a very, very good slot nickel corner. And, they have a good amount of pieces, and they're still rebuilding a little bit, but I think it is good to bring in a new defensive coordinator after last season. Give something to boost this team. Moving on, nobody really saw this as a surprise either. The Bengals have fired their defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo, after 6 seasons with them. He spent 6 seasons with them, which I had no idea, but I could have seen that one coming. The Bengals basically lost this season because of their defense. They ended the season 9-8 and didn't make the playoffs because their defense couldn't hold. They just simply could not do their job. They finished 25th in total defense, though. I thought it was worse throughout the middle of the season there. They were probably around the 30s. They were unable to stop receivers. Their safeties, DBs, unable to do their job. And then let's move on to some head coaches and GMs here. Obviously, the big one, Gerard Mayo. I'm sorry about that. Gerard Mayo is fired by the Patriots after 1 season. 1 season with them. They went 4-14, 4-13. Yeah, I think that's right. 4-13 or 3-14, one of the two. I don't think it should have happened. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there was something else going on. But firing a head coach after 1 season just doesn't really seem like the move, especially because Mayo's been around for a while. He was Belichick's pupil basically. They were waiting on him to hire him, and I think honestly, Patriots have just been so spoiled over the past, I don't know, let's say 20 years, 25 years with Belichick, that they finally had a losing season. They just didn't know how to react. I don't think this is the way to go about it. You can't really work with a team if the team doesn't have a lot of good players. It's like trying to play chess without the chess pieces. You just can't do it. It's not going to work. I don't blame him. He was severely understaffed. I mean, Drake May looks great. They have no receivers, no offensive line. Their defense kind of struggled this year. Christian Gonzalez looks great. Their GM's doing a great job drafting, if nothing else. But firing a head coach after 1 season? Come on. If they fire, let's say the Lions. I know everyone's brought this up, but let's say the Lions fired their head coach after 1 season. Dan Campbell would be out of there. They went I think they had 1 or 2 wins that season, his first season, and they wouldn't have had. I mean, he's one of the best coaches in the league now. You just got to give these guys time to develop, bring in their own guys, figure out some schemes, and this is just not the way to go about that. But a guy that did prove himself and was consistently just not good enough for the job, head coach Doug Peterson was fired by the Jaguars. Everyone saw this coming. I think in like week 8, we started saying he should be fired next week, and they waited till the end of the season at least. A very losing season, but they did wait till the end of the season. And finally, the Titans fired their GM, Ran Carthon. I don't actually know how to say his name. I'm sorry if I butchered that. But he was there for 2 seasons. Titans don't really do a great job drafting. I've kind of noticed that over the years. I can't really tell you any notable draft picks that they've had recently. The last good one, it might even be Derrick Henry. I'm really trying to think. I'm sure they've got some decent offensive. No, their defensive tackle, Jeffrey Simmons, right? So that's probably the last one. That was 2019. So not a good look. But they do have problems drafting. They've drafted a lot of guys in the first round that just really haven't panned out. Not much else to say, but they're looking for a new GM. Hopefully can turn them around. They do have the first overall pick, so whoever they hire is going to have a lot to work with. Let's just put it that way. And some other news here. The LA Chargers have signed Ezekiel Elliott. Moving on. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Ramsey want out of Miami. Hill actually requested a trade. Ramsey posted some cryptic stuff on Instagram. Whatever, who cares? Surprisingly, Hill wants out of Miami. I guess surprisingly, not surprisingly. I don't know if Miami was ever the place for him. Who knows? He's 30 now, and I guess he wants to move for his family. I don't know what part of his family, but apparently that's one of the reasons why he wants to leave Miami. And you know what? Good on him. Maybe he'll end up on the Ravens or the Falcons or the Chargers, somewhere where they actually have a chance to win. And then finally, I have the 2025 NFL draft order up to the 18th spot. Well, I already said it earlier, but the Titans do have the first overall pick. Then it goes the Browns, the Giants at 3, the Patriots at 4, the Jaguars at 5, the Raiders fell all the way to 6, which is going to be a big hit for their franchise because they need a lot of key pieces. The Jets are at 7, Panthers at 8, Saints at 9, Bears at 10, 49ers at 11, Cowboys at 12, Dolphins at 13, the Colts at 14, the Falcons at 15, the Cardinals at 16, the Bengals at 17, and the Seahawks at 18. The highest, the best record and highest draft pick. Highest draft pick? Lowest draft pick? Highest draft pick, I'm going to say, because they're 18, not 1. Highest draft pick of a non-playoff team. Speaking of that, the playoffs are now locked in. I will go over that as well while we're here. Saturday, January 11th, first playoff game here is the AFC at 4:30. Chargers at Texans. That should be a pretty good game. Texans are at home. Saturday, January 11th at 8 p.m. The Steelers at the Ravens. A AFC North divisional matchup. The 4 seed versus the 5 seed? No. That's not right. The 3 seed versus the 6 seed. I kept thinking that the Steelers were the 5 seed. They're not anymore. The Chargers have taken their spot at the 5. January 12th, Sunday, at 1 p.m., the Broncos take on the Bills. The Bills are at home. The Broncos are the 7 seed. The Bills are the 2 seed. January 12th at 8 p.m., the Commanders at the Buccaneers. Oh, I missed one. I'm sorry. Sunday, January 12th at 4:30, the Packers at the Eagles. That's the first NFC matchup. The Eagles are at home, maybe without their starting quarterback. We'll get into that later. Then, at 8 p.m., the Commanders at the Bucks. Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are at home. They are the 3 seed, not the 4 seed. And they take on the 6 seed Commanders. And finally, Monday, January 13th at 8 p.m., the 5 seed versus the 4 seed. The Vikings at the Rams. Rams are at home. Vikings obviously lost the Sunday night matchup. Wow, I'm getting my days all incorrect here. I'm sorry. Sunday night matchup against the Lions. I will get into that later, but they lost the first overall seed, and they are now the 5 seed. I've got a few game recaps here. I mean, it was Week 18. A lot of teams rested their starters. There wasn't too much to talk about. Obviously, a few teams clinched, got seeding, XYZ. But I will, obviously, as always, start with the Bills. They lost to the Patriots 23-16. Who cares? The Bills started all their backups. Mitch Trubisky, well, technically Josh started for them, played one snap, then went out. Mitch Trubisky came in. He actually looked pretty good. Not great, but good enough where if Josh were to go down, we'd have some glimmer of hope, but it'd be over. And then eventually they started Mike White somewhere between third, fourth quarter. Maybe just to get some rest for Trubisky, I guess. I don't know. But Mike White came in, did not play very well. And Patriots, actually, their 6th round pick, Joe Milton out of Tennessee, one of the biggest, strongest arms I've ever seen out of a prospect. The backup to Drake May came in and played great. He looked great. Was able to move out of the pocket, get around, evade pressure, and just chuck it downfield, find open receivers, and target. I mean, it was the Bills' backups. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of potential there. I did think a team like the Raiders or the Titans would have picked him up maybe in the draft, but the Patriots got him in the 6th round, kind of a steal, and now a lot of teams are calling them about wanting to trade for him. So good on the Patriots. They got some draft stock up, and I think that will help them out. And of course, the Patriots lost their first overall pick spot with the win, and they now have, what did I say earlier, 4? So that's it's a big hit, I guess. But what would they really have done at 1? I guess maybe they still get the same pick they would have had anyway. So, but moving on. Panthers at Falcons, 44-38 in overtime. The Panthers do take that one and win. They get the ball first on offense, go down and score. Okay. By the time overtime ran around, the Buccaneers had already beat the Saints, so they really didn't have much to play for. I think, honestly, they stopped trying so hard. With the loss, they did move up a few spots in the draft order, so not too upset. But Bryce Young, I'm so happy for him. He's looking great at the end of the season here. Panthers really can't ask more out of him. Those few games where he sat, something changed, something about Andy Dalton mentoring him. He looks like a different quarterback. He had 3 pass touchdowns, 2 rush touchdowns, 251 yards. And on the other side of the ball, Michael Penix also looks great. 2 quarterbacks who are going to be the future in the NFC South. Finally, we're seeing something happen out of these 2 teams that have just been slumped for the past forever. Almost 10 years now. 8, 9 years now. But Penix had 312 yards, 2 touchdowns, and another one of those interceptions where it goes through the receiver's hands and out into the defender. But he did lead the team into overtime twice in 2 games, and in both games they lost. I don't know what that says about our defensive coordinator, Jimmy Lake, but it should say something. I mean, they should do something about it, but I doubt they will. Bijan had 28 carries, 170 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Drake London, 10 receptions, 187 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He ended 4th in receiving for the regular season. That is really impressive. Finally having his breakout season. Couldn't be happier for him, and he's about to get this bag in the offseason. He's looking like the best receiver of his class. Maybe that's crazy to say. We'll see. But the Falcons on defense just look terrible. And obviously, our coaches are on the hot seat. Jimmy Lake, on the hot seat. Raheem Morris, on the hot seat. Especially after the timeout failure in Week 17. But I doubt he will be fired. I doubt actually either of them will be fired. But we'll see. We'll see how the offseason plays out. There are a few other games I want to talk about. Just run through them here. The Jags and the Colts. It was an OT thriller. They did go to overtime, and the Colts just barely escaped. The Jags made the completion on 4th and I think 22, but they weren't able to get it across the first down line. Jags didn't really need to win, honestly. Mac Jones at QB. Brian Thomas looks great. Not really much else you can say there. Jags didn't need to win, and the Colts barely escaped that one. And I think that was a wake-up call for them that they needed to change something here. And then Giants-Eagles. Giants can't even get a win against the Eagles' backups, but somehow they beat the Colts last week. Tanner McKee absolutely cooked. 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he honestly should be the QB2 on that roster after that performance. Kenny Pickett is not the guy to back up Jalen Hurts, especially if he continues to be hurt. I would expect Tanner McKee to be the starting quarterback for the playoffs, which is crazy, but we've seen crazier things out of the Eagles. The Commanders and Marcus Mariota beat Trey Lance and the Cowboys. Trey Lance had a decent showing, not great, but what are you really going to expect, I suppose? And Marcus Mariota was able to beat them. Marcus Mariota showing that he's still a great backup in this league, honestly. He was the Falcons starting quarterback 2 years ago. Yeah. So, there's that. Bears beat the Packers on a last-minute field goal, and they beat the Packers at Lambeau for the first time since 2018. Bears end the season with a big win. They snapped the losing streak. Huge momentum hit, obviously, to beat the Packers. But the Packers sustained some injuries in this one. Jordan Love has injured his elbow and was out for a majority of that game. And Christian Watson is now out for the season, I believe, with a non-contact leg injury. I don't know the specifics of that, but he is out for the season. Two big hits to your team, especially going into the playoffs when this game isn't really necessary. It's just for seeding. So I don't know. I'm sure LaFleur's getting a ton of backlash for that, but at the end of the day, that is worst possible case scenario, I suppose. Not worst possible, but a very bad case scenario. Saints at Buccaneers. The Bucs narrowly escaped to shut the door on the Falcons and, of course, the Saints. And they got Mike Evans to 1,000 yards. Good on him. Continues the streak. I think he's at 11 now. 11 1,000-yard seasons straight. Has not had a non-1,000-yard season, I believe, in his career. And the Bucs, it's going to be a tough one in the playoffs. But again, it's a divisional game. It's always going to be tough. We'll see how they play in the playoffs here. They're either going to be hot or cold. Very hot or very cold, I should say. The Broncos absolutely steamrolled the Chiefs. Carson Wentz and the Chiefs' backups were not able to get it done. Obviously, Carson Wentz is terrible. If Mahomes goes down, it's over for them, basically. The Chiefs' defensive backups unable to stop the Broncos. I think the final score was 31-0. I'm checking right now. Hold on. It was 38-0. I apologize. 38-0. Big goose egg on the board for the Chiefs. Unable to get anything done with their backups. Obviously, I mean, anyone could have expected this. And I'm sure they didn't want the Bengals in the playoffs. So, more incentive to lose to the Broncos there. A couple more here. Seahawks beat the Rams backups and knock them down a playoff spot. They go down to the 4th seed. Don't think the Rams really care that much. They don't want any of their guys getting hurt, and that's what the Packers probably realistically should have done, but oh well. The Dolphins lost to the Jets. Rodgers plays pretty well, and maybe his last game of his career, and of course he hit that 500 touchdown margin very handily. He had a few, I think 4 touchdowns in this game. So good on him. Good day for the vet, and they're moving on from him after this season. We'll see where he goes, if not Cancun or the retirement home. Vikings finally could not keep up with the Lions' defense. They were unable to score a touchdown. Darnold has a really tough day on the road in Detroit. And I mean, look, divisional games are always going to be tough. That's a really tough division. I think the Vikings aren't as strong as we thought they were. I personally thought they were going to go into Detroit and win this one, but they were unable to get it done. Sam Darnold just looked off, just looked very off. I don't really know. But obviously, the Lions secure the 1st seed. I hope to see more out of the Vikings in the playoffs. But again, divisional games are always going to be tough. If they play the Lions again, I think they get the same result. But I'm going to move on to my quick picks / my playoff prediction here to wrap it up. Kind of a short one here, but of course there's no fantasy anymore. Congrats to everyone who won their fantasy championship. And I'll talk more about, playoffs, stuff like that in the next episode. But for now, I'm going to give you my playoff predictions here. They're kind of basic. I was doing them last night. I'm kind of looking at them, and they're a little basic, I won't lie. But I'm going to try here. Ready? So, wild card round in the AFC, we got the Chargers at the Texans. I am taking the Chargers in this one. It's technically an upset. Sorry about that. It's technically an upset, but it's the 5 seed versus the 4 seed. I think the 5 is going to come away because the Texans look like the weakest link here in the AFC playoff, and a really tough AFC playoff, I should say. And I think the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh can come away with this one. The Steelers at the Ravens. I'm going to take the Ravens. They handily beat them earlier in the season, and they are kind of on a hot streak right now, and not a lot of people are looking at that. They've beaten all their opponents by a good margin in every single game here, especially steamrolling the Texans on Christmas Day. That's your defining game there for sure. Broncos at Bills, The Bills are going to handily win that one, I hope. I shouldn't say that. As a Bills fan myself, I am a little worried about this one. The Broncos have a really good defense, and if our defense can't keep up, we would have to go into a shootout, and I don't think we are going to win if that happens. But we are at home. You got to keep that into account. We are 8-0 at home. I think that'll be the edge enough to get the win on this one. I shouldn't have said handily. I don't want to say handily. I do think this is going to be a good game. It's going to be a closer game than a lot of people think. But yeah, I am taking the Bills to win this one. In the NFC wildcard round, the Packers at the Eagles, and I think if Hurts plays, the Eagles are going to win this one. The Packers are just not good enough to keep up, and Jordan Love also might not play, so we'll see how that one plays out. I do think the Eagles are going to win this one. I do think that they are one of the best teams in the NFC, if not the best team in the NFC. Let's go to Commanders at Buccaneers. I think the Commanders are going to win this one. They're kind of on a hot streak right now. The Buccaneers, they're all over the place. I don't really know how to feel about them. If we see the Buccaneers that played the Lions in week 3, I believe, then they're going to win. If we see the Buccaneers that just played the Saints, it's going to be a different story. I do think the Commanders are a little bit more consistent. That should be a good one as well. I think that'll be a close one, if not. And the Commanders, I think, are going to come out with the win. Vikings at Rams. The Vikings are going to win that one, I think. The Rams have gotten cold at probably the worst possible time, I guess. I shouldn't say cold. If we want to talk about cold, we should talk about the Steelers. They have gone cold at the worst possible time. They've lost, I think, their last 4, if not more. And they're just not in a good spot right now. Yeah, that's really all I got. They've gone cold. The Rams have kind of gone cold at the end of the season here. The offense isn't as spunky as it used to be, but they did have that rest day. We'll see how they come out against the Vikings, and that pretty tough defense, but terrible against the pass. I'm using big words here, but pretty bad against the pass. Good against the run. We'll see how they get attacked, and we'll see if the Vikings can keep up if the Rams push this one to a shootout. So then the divisional round would be Chargers at Chiefs. I'm going to take the Chiefs. I know it's boring, but Chargers, I think, just don't have enough. They are just a young team. They'll be really scary for a couple years to come, but I think the Chiefs, they're coming off, I think, 3 weeks of rest or so. They're going to be able to beat the Chargers here. And then Ravens at Bills. This one is going to be a tough one. I think this was probably my toughest decision. I've been thinking about it, but I'm going to give the Bills the edge here just because they are at home. They have the 2 seed. If the Bills were the 3 seed and the Ravens were the 2 seed, I would easily take the Ravens. But because the Bills are at home, I just think they have that slight edge to beat the Ravens and continue on to the AFC Conference Championship. But In the NFC divisional round, we have Commanders at Lions. I think the Lions handily beat them here. Commanders, they're pushing their luck a little bit too much. It was a good run, but I think it would have ended here for them. And then Eagles at Vikings. Let's assume they have Jalen Hurts back by now. I think the Eagles are going to beat the Vikings here for sure. Eagles are very scary when they have everyone back, and I think that'll be a good game, but the Vikings just unable to keep up with those super giants in the NFC, it looks like. So then the AFC Conference Championship, Bills at the Chiefs in Arrowhead. Everything is just pointing to the Chiefs. I don't want to look like the Bills fan that says, this is our year, we're going to finally beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. The Chiefs are a different breed in the playoffs. They really are. They're a different team. They consistently are just the best team in the playoffs. I think because we're at Arrowhead, because we would have played 3 games compared to the Chiefs 2, counting the championship, of course, I think our defense is just too poor, too banged up, and I think we give up too many points to them. I think the Chiefs continue their winning streak against the Bills in the playoffs. The narrative keeps getting pushed, and they make it to the Super Bowl. Chiefs, that is. For the NFC Conference Championship, we have the Eagles at the Lions. Originally, I did say the Lions. I have the Lions written here. But let's say the Eagles get everyone back. That offense is so scary. A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, that offensive line, Jalen Hurts, the defense. I can't even think of a flaw on the defense for them. I mean, rush defense, I guess, would be their biggest flaw. I mean, their defense has looked so good. Nickel corner, you got Cooper DeJean, who's just been locked down. Avonte Maddox. That's not the player I was thinking of. I'm so sorry. Not Avonte Maddox. Quinion Mitchell. I don't know why I said Avonte Maddox. I am just not thinking straight. Quinion Mitchell, great add-on for them. Darius Slay, great add-on for them. And if you want to talk about safeties, we can go into Avonte Maddox, who's the backup. But as of now, C.J. Gardner-Johnson looks great. Reed Blankenship, he looks great. That Eagles secondary is just so strong and fueled by Jalen Carter. They got Zach Bond. There's not really a huge flaw in their defense, while the Lions are just too banged up this year. They're just so banged up, and I know this is not the Super Bowl that people really want to hear, but I think the Eagles can beat the Lions in this one, and they do beat the Lions in this one. Give me Eagles-Chiefs rematch in the Super Bowl, and the Eagles are going to be your Super Bowl champion. I said it. The Eagles and Avonte Maddox are going to beat the 2-time Super Bowl champion Chiefs. They're going to spoil their three-peat, and they're going to win that rematch, and they're going to be Super Bowl champions on a real field that is not slippery. And then obviously, ideally, the best Super Bowl matchups would include the Bills and the Ravens in the AFC, and the Eagles and the Lions, or even the Vikings in the NFC for me. Any of those I think would be a fun matchup for sure. But that is going to do it for me. Again, like I said, a pretty short episode, but I don't have too much to cover. Hopefully if your team is in the playoffs, they make it far. I'm rooting for every team here besides the Chiefs. Sorry, Chiefs fans. But I am rooting for pretty much everyone else. I think anyone else in the Super Bowl would be very fun. And it should be a good one. This has been a really good season. Let's see how these playoffs play out. A lot of good matchups, like I said. But that will do it for me. And I will see you guys. Wow, my brain is just not working. I will see you guys in the next one, hopefully with a better brain. Bye-bye.